Okay, so raise your glass for a toast. Champagne for our real friends and real pain for our sham friends. Francis Bacon. Hello, this is Pat Coakley and episode 46 of Podsnacks, the weekly edition of my daily blog, www.artofthediet.com. And the toast came from a recollection from the writer Julian Barnes, speaking to Eleanor Wachtel on her most recent podcast, Writers and Company, on the CBC. Her podcast is my favorite one ever, by the way. And it just seemed to be the perfect toast for this episode because I'm trying to understand the fat acceptance movement that is out there and mystifying to me. And so this week I listened to episode 589 of This American Life. And it's titled, Tell Me I'm Fat. And I recommend you listen to it too. One voice, Lindy West, a writer, columnist, blogger for The Guardian, has a new book called Shrill. She has a very distinctive voice and humor, so I ordered her book. They had a conversation on This American Life with three women about weight and the impact it has had on their lives and continues to have. The first woman was Lindy West, who is advising her friends to just simply call her fat and to get over it, and to stop thinking it's something she's ashamed of. She isn't. And P.S., don't try telling her you are concerned for her health, because if you were really interested in her health, you'd be concerned about her mental health and her 28 years of being shamed and humiliated by people trying to help, as well as the just plain mean and bigoted folks. Number two was Elna Baker, a producer on the This American Life show, who lost 100+ pounds several years ago and has kept it off with periodic pharmacological help. Now, as a thin woman, she has the job she always wanted and is newly married, and has recently recorded a conversation with her husband about her belief that he would not have dated the fat Elna. She ended her segment by admitting that she wasn't happy that she was still using the drug to help her lose the weight, for which she can no longer get legitimate prescriptions, so she has to go online or get it from Mexico or someplace. She knows exactly how messed up it is, she said. Quote, I know that all of this is wrong. I don't like what I am, but I've accepted it as part of the deal. She mentioned Lindy West as a writer she admires, as well as a book titled Dietland by Sarai Walker. I ordered that book too. The third woman was Roxane Gay, a writer who wishes she could be more fat accepting of what she calls her super morbidly obese self, but simply mourns her lack of freedom to go and do what she wants to do, as well as have clothes she might like to wear if she were at least Lane Bryant fat. Roxane points out to Ira Glass, the thin as a reed moderator, that Lindy West is Lane Bryant fat, meaning absolutely no disrespect to Lindy, but just pointing out that Lindy is at least, or has at least, a retail store she can go to find clothes that fit. I'm ordering one of Roxane's books too. At 71, and as someone who has written about aspects of weight and weight management for almost 18 months, I heard ideas and concepts from these young women. I believe their ages span from 28 to 41, in a way I've not heard them discuss before, and that made me nod my head, sigh with empathy for them, for me, and explanations for what I'd not identified but knew immediately when I heard them discussing it. In Lindy West's case, she can put it all in front of you hilariously. Elna's story was not the least bit funny. And despite being a healthy weight, one worries the burden and the disappointment of it is growing. Roxanne just puts the world in perspective and is weary from absorbing the daily challenges of being her size. She'd like to be more fat accepting and wishes all well who can do it. But the realities of her life, the struggles to find a restaurant, the challenge of traveling, the lack of fashion choices, these limitations make her not accepting of her current size. The three of them made me realize why some have decided to raise the white flag or third finger in protest to trying to get their bodies into so-called healthy shape, and to decide that accepting themselves first may be their healthiest option. They also demonstrated what strength, kindness, and wit it requires to be a fat woman in this culture. Elna even admitted the fat Elna was the person she liked better than her current thin Elna. Which, P.S., reminds me of why I am doing the summer art project about the before woman in the before and after photo sequence. I spoke last week about how it's always the woman on the right, the after woman, that gets all the admiration. And I want to celebrate the person on the left who deserves our respect. And I want to do this by taking bits and pieces of the old fat clothes that I have in my closet, that you have in yours, and clothes that you would be happy never to see again once you reach the size you want to reach. And I'd like to make them into something beautiful and artful, and maybe something you can admire. So I am hoping you'll send me a swatch of material from the articles of clothing, preferably a 12-inch by 12-inch piece you can cut from the piece of clothing or pieces, and send to me at Pat Coakley, P.O. Box number 653, Bellingham, Mass. Bellingham, Mass. 02019. If you could send it soon, like today or tomorrow, really I'd be so appreciative. The sooner the better. In the 1950s and the 1960s, if there had been an opt-out button for the preoccupation with weight, I might have taken it too. It was like being in prison for the crime of failure, failing at losing and keeping weight off. At 71, I have too many preoccupations related to remaining independent and out of the dependence prison that many elderly face. And those fuel my decision to be one of the two Lindy West mentions who is able to keep weight off, at least for 7 years. P.S. There's more of us out there. But to quote Lindy, Whatever. I get her point. The majority are not successful for a variety of physiological, genetic, and psychological reasons. There are more of us, though, than anyone ever writes or talks about. And it is the reason I do this podcast. We are out here, Lindy, trying to figure out life as best we can too. But I'm going to read these books and listen to these voices. Their health decisions are their own. Their rage, sadness, frustration, it belongs to all of us, regardless of what the scale says. Besides, I want to keep track of someone who writes like this. And P.S., this is where I warn folks that the following material may contain some offensive words. So this is a quote from Lindy West. But most importantly, I reject this entire framework. I don't give a bleep what causes anyone's fatness. It's irrelevant and it's none of my business. I'm not making excuses because I have nothing to excuse. I reject the notion that thinness is the goal, that thin equals better, that I am an unfinished thing and that my life can really start when I lose weight, that then I will be a real person and have finally succeeded as a woman. I'm not going to waste another second of my life thinking about this. I don't want to have another bleeping conversation with another bleeping woman about what she's eating or not eating or regrets eating or pretends to not regret eating to mask the regret. Oops, I just yawned to death. If you really want change to happen, if you really want to help fat people, you need to understand that shaming an already shamed population is, well, shameful. Do you know what happened as soon as I rejected all this bleep and fell in unconditional love with my entire body? I started losing weight immediately. Well, la-dee bleeping duh. So let me end on another quote that doesn't require editing. From a conversation with Eleanor Wachtel and Julian Barnes. They were discussing one of his books about the Russian composer Dmitri Shostakovich. And Mr. Barnes described him as someone who was impulsive and always living outside the metronomic lives of regular people and suffering for his outside behavior. The only time and place, Mr. Barnes said, that Shostakovich really felt confident was when he was making decisions, composing music. He knew his decisions were good ones, even if others questioned them. He had this confidence, his own unique creativity metronome to live in, as the world outside of him disapproved or judged him. I just thought this applied to this whole episode. We can create our own metronome and live within it. I suspect that is what Lindy West, Elna Baker, Roxane Gay are trying to do, each in their own way. I am grateful to hear their stories and look forward to learning more about them. So thanks, as always, for listening. I know there are other things you can do with your time, and I'd love it if you have found anything of value in these podcasts to share them with your friends via social media channels or email or word of mouth, to let people know that there's hope and humor and some humility along this road. And I'm very grateful that you're listening, and I look forward to seeing you next week.